Hey everyone, it's Will, GamerDad, with another video for you. So in tonight's episode of Tsukiha Summon, we'll discuss the different banners that are available as of this newer version 2.14.500. Note that this is available in the Play Store and the App Store, and so you will have to fully update in order to access a lot of these banners. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So, as you all know and are highly seeking, we'll first discuss my thoughts of the current Star Dream encounter. We'll go over what you can get, and my thoughts about who to pick for. Of course, these suggestions are the only suggestions. Summon for waifus, husbandos, like fan favorites, and so on and so forth if you want. The purpose of this video is more like to suggest and share my thoughts about how I kind of go over some of the units, and as a guide if you have absolutely no idea in the game. Otherwise, you can just definitely pick and choose what you feel is necessary for your roster. Now, keep in mind that the criteria I use, my friend and I use for determining who to pick in Star Dream really depends on the lifetime use of the unit. So, first of all, what I mean is that I want to evaluate units based on if you started the game day one, if you're 1 year in, if you're 2, 3, or 4 years in, say you're on chapter 50, or you finished 84. Say you haven't even beaten one boss yet, or you're at the end game taking on all those warped super bosses out there. So, when I'm suggesting these units, I do try to take into account all these things. Not only that, but I try to take into account units' specialties, their niches, specialized unique abilities, and we also evaluate their ability to participate in advanced strats, that is, low turn, super advanced, difficult clears, or also relaxing Eden, where we are trying to use powerful units to make life easier for ourselves, clearing most content in the game without much struggle at all. So, without any further ado, let's look at the banner itself, and then also see who you can pick. Now, keep in mind, all these banners that we're talking about right now, with the exception of the free banner, will all be Fatefuls. That is, you need to use 1,000 paid stones for each and every pull. You can buy the packages of 2,000 and 4,000 stones in the store. And keep in mind, if you have not bought the premium starter kit, or if you have bought them and you have saved your 1,000 paid stones, now you are eligible to select on the Star Dream. And first of all, a Star Dream banner is a 10 out of 10 banner, no questions asked. To summarize, you do a regular 10 pill, which will have every unit in the game, including Fireside Cat, which is AS Nekoko, and I believe it will have Alter Tsukiha, which is available in this update as well. Let's just take a look. Yep. Note that Moonlight Flower Hismena, which is the most recent unit other than that, is also in here. Again, unfortunately, there are a bunch of losers, 3.5s and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of Star Piece, it should feature everyone available in the game as of this update as well, at least advertised in WFS. So, you can see that the Flams, Evas, Nekoko AS, and let's just make sure that okay, so this is, let's see if Alter is in here. I believe it should be Alter. Yes, Alter Hismena, as well as Noble Blossom Tsukiha. I think someone was mentioning that they didn't see it, but however, Alters are split away from their regular form, so don't get fooled there. All right, so straight out, we'll go right into my picks in terms of what I think are best units, and then we'll talk about kind of what would be still great units, but not necessarily in the first few picks. So, my top 3 contenders. Number 1. No questions asked, I recommend Flamelopus. Now, I realize that that's going to be a little bit contentious, and again, most of these picks will be contentious, but hear me out here. Number 2 is going to be Perfection, aka Alter Shion. And number 3 on the list will be AS Nekoko. Okay, so, number 1, the reason why I say Flam is your first pick is that in all elements of the game, that is from day 1 till day 1000, you can use Flam. You can use Flam without Grasta. You can use Flam with Grasta. She can help you clear mobs from the very first chapter. She has a 0 MP farming, so you won't have to run out of MP. She can clear everything in the game, story-wise, from chapter 1 to 84. Also, if you think about the way she is used in endgame strats, you can see that I can use her, albeit with other powerful units, I get that. But she has a role to play, and she is considered meta. She is one of the top 10 contenders in a water magic DPS team, and I would argue that in the right team, she could still be a #1 magic user DPS. She can also be a #1 water mixed team DPS. You have a free water zone setter that in Aisha that essentially helps you have 2 out of 4 water units, and you just shove another 2 in there or anything like that, and you'll probably win the game by itself. Again, only downside I would say about picking Flam first is that AS Flam is coming out in the next few months, provided you can save enough free stones to summon on that AS banner. You can forego that pick if you don't have Flam in any form and try for the AS banner, being that most AS banners have a full 2% rate up for any form of Flam. But let's be honest, most of us are broke as heck. We don't have a lot of stones. We probably already got broke on AS Nokoko or Alter Hismina or all the other units out there. And don't forget, Main Story Part 3 is coming. There's Monoka and other units, possibly a global first unit if we do believe the trend from the last couple of years. In which case, let's be honest, if you don't have enough stones, Flam, you won't be disappointed in Flam. I think Flam is relatively easy to use. She still has some support. She can increase water DPS. She can give mental focus, which is nice for teams that don't have a magic zone setter, especially early game. But even in end game, sometimes you're using a water zone team like Aisha, where Aisha is not supplying mental focus, and she can give both herself and Eva, if you're using Eva in the same team, mental focus for maximum water DPS. Alright, so enough gushing about Flam, no pun intended. Ultra Xion or Perfection, everyone knows, is broken as heck. Well known as one of the 4 units of the team to rule them all. Joking here. Ultra Xion is the premier Magic Zone setter. Can do it preemptively, that means 1-turn Magic Zone teams. Can do massive amounts of damage. Can Uno reverse card with Paper Tiger. His DPS is limited based on the exploiting weaknesses of enemies. However, let's be honest, if you are fighting a unit that's a boss that's resistant to something, he can switch it up for you. So he is invaluable in making things easier for you. And as a Magic Zone team, yeah, he can power that team like no tomorrow. Enough said about him. AS Nokoko. Why AS Nokoko? First of all, remember, I did say AS Nokoko's banner was a 10 out of 10 banner even now, and yes, she is still available here. She's only been out for like, you know, a couple weeks. She is an Earth Zone setter. She can VC in and increase crit damage by 50%. She can lock in another zone. But what really sets her apart is the fact that her ability to give a triple debuff in any elemental or attack type zone, so with the exception of things like Sea of Stars zone or Flash Strike stance, you can get a 50-50-50 as well as a type res 50 down, guaranteed for 3 turns AoE. And so if you notice that the power creep has occurred, a lot of power creep has come not from the offensive side where you need to deal more and more DPS, although there are examples of that. A lot of the power creep is the enemy is dealing significant amount of damage to you, and you need a way to mitigate that. 50-50-50 is essentially great. That is the top debuff out there with the exception of 1 unit that can do 60, I think. AS Byaka. However, other than that, I mean, 50 is great. If everyone's used Kid and knows how awesome Kid is, or Orlea, then you know how powerful 50% debuff is for protecting yourself. Keep in mind, Kid needs stacks of her orbs to get up to 10 to get maximum 50, which takes time. Orlea's is a delayed 1, which means you're vulnerable for that first turn that you activated. And keep in mind that she sets zone with a move, so you may not be able to debuff unless you first turn AF with Orlea. AS Nakoko can do it straight. And by the way, that move also locks in another zone and awakens it. So, and it also heals. So not only are you protecting yourself, you're healing, you're debuffing, you're awakening zone. What else is there to like? Don't forget that she can also increase power, speed, int, and everything for your whole team, and change all your units into one element for one turn to blast the heck out of anyone as long as it's under an elemental zone. So do you want to do some Rainbow Neptune, aka fire? You know what I mean? Change her to any element. Change your top DPS to any element that is in your zone that you already activated. So winning hard in any era of your game, whether or not you're in early game, mid game, and end game. Small caveat, I understand if you're really early in the game and you don't have access to a lot of zone units, AS Nakoko may be of less use initially. However, remember what I said earlier. My criteria is not only what's valuable now, but what I deem to be possibly valuable in the future. Also, you're using real money here, right? So if I'm suggesting something, I keep in mind that I want you to be able to use this unit for at least 12 months out if possible. I really try to recommend units if you're spending real money on that can last, multiple rounds in meta, and I think AS Nakoko can do that. Not sure, but that's what I suspect. Alright, so if your jaw hasn't dropped with the suggestion of the top 3 units, we'll go with my 4th, and I feel this is tied for 4th. So this 4th pick really depends on what you already have, where you're going with your teams, and what holes you still have. So we'll go over them, and I don't feel any of them are any better than others, although, again, all subjective. First off, let's go with Alter Hismina, aka Moonlight Hismina. Again, I know you can summon this in your regular banner, so if you have stones and you don't want to Star Dream something, try that first. Keep in mind that that banner is a half rate up, so it's harder to get Alter Hismina. Also, remember what I say, unless you don't want to grind, if you have the forms of the units that I'm suggesting, please, please, please save your money. Choose a unit you have no form of. That way you can stretch out your value of your dollar instead of burning it on just a free upgrade, so to speak. Anyways, Alter Hismina applies multiple weapon breaks, which is exploitable against multi-hits. She does multi-hits. She does high levels of water slash DPS. Not only that, she can help support the team with her break status. She can hit multiple 4-hit moves, and is not limited by things like Eva, where if you have less than 50% HP, it only hits 1 round of 4, round 2 hits instead of 4 hits. Alter Hismina hits 4 hits twice, regardless, as long as it's awakened zone. And I realize that is a caveat in its own right, but let's be honest. She can awaken her own zone. You can use it for that number of turns, and you should be able to win super hard with that. She has physical res down, water res down. She is also flexible, so if you plug her in a team that has, for example, all staff units, she does now staff damage, which is essentially magic damage. Not only that because she's flexible, as your roster grows, whether or not you're day 1 or day 1000, you can now put her into multiple weapon zone teams. So if you want to use a magic zone team, she will fit. If you want a slash team, she's already a slash, and so on and so forth. In terms of water, obviously she is extremely powerful. She can't change elements like Nakoko, but her raw DPS makes up for that. Okay, moving on. For Orlea and Alma, it's really a toss-up. Quickly speaking, we've talked about these 2 units before. Alma, only Crystal Zone setter, ability to bypass barriers with her magic move, exploits weakness with her Pierce move. So the fact that she has Pierce and magic in one unit is great. The only is Crystal Zone setter, which she can abuse. The fact she can do massive amounts of DPS, punch through barriers. She can be used on a magic zone team, which you've seen, and so on and so forth. And she can reset her moves to the element that the enemy is weak to, which is cheap. She can regenerate her Lunatic, which means for extended fight she can do more than one, which is also cheap. She does have a dual debuff. No one talks about that because you won already, and so on and so forth. Orlea is a little bit different. As much as Alma is awesome and essential in many teams, and the fact that she can be not only a crystal zone setter, but the fact she can fit very well for magic and pierce teams and bypass barriers with her magic move. Orlea is essentially the foundation of excuse me, any Thunder Zone team. Keep this in mind. When Orlea came out, ES also came out at the same time. And ES is a Thunder Zone setter, and she can VC into Thunder Zone. But however, the only way to one-turn Thunder Zone is with Orlea. She can activate it preemptively, so you can one-turn Thunder AF. She gives a type shield while she activates that. She has a triple debuff that, mind you, is delayed. However, an AF is not delayed, and also heals you, by the way, and cure status. She has Allumage, which is a broken buffing move that can buff your team up to 100% in Thunder Zone, 50% outside. She has Hold Ground given to everyone as long as she's in the front line and starts a battle. Crazy, crazy stuff. With just drafting Orlea onto your team as a Star Dream, everyone should have Miyu in some form. If you've been playing the game for anywhere from 6 months or longer, you should have enough codexes to side grade to Athena from regular Miyu or whatever Miyu form you have, in which case I consider that to be accessible. If you have ES Miyu on your team already, and you have Orlea on your team, you only need 2 more Thunders units. Skull is a free one, which you can access. Technically, you can change Surge or one of the other complex dreams for your 4th. If you don't want to do that, the reason why I said AS Nakoka is higher than Orlea, now you can just put her in there anyways. So if you already have the top 3 units, your Thunder team is set with drafting or picking Orlea as your 4th pick. So hopefully that gives you some idea of the top units that I think are not only currently usable, but possibly usable into the future. And, you know, I really hope that that is correct. Excuse me, I've been talking for a few hours already. So anyways, moving on to tier 2. When I say tier 2, I really don't mean that they're crap or they're bad or anything like that. It's just that you really want to have 1 copy of those units I mentioned in front first, and then after that we can discuss. So in the next, right under all of these is the next kind of group of units that can add a lot to your team. However, you know, everyone's is more of a preference at this point. If you've watched some of my previous Star Dream Encounter, how I pick, usually go with things like support units. That is either supporting through offensive support, and some of those offensive supports can also do some DPS. There are zone units, and finally, DPS units are generally drafted a little bit lower. However, it's a little bit harder now to differentiate between them because with the way that power creep has occurred, some units that are DPS also have a massive amount of offensive support. Some units have only support, and most zone units have some DPS in it as well as support. And so you have to really look at the, you know, the moveset and what you want to add to your roster. And so at this point, this is a lot harder to determine what is absolutely what you want and what you need. So I won't go over all the different units, but some of the ones that I feel will stand out as to why I did not suggest or will suggest, I'll just address them here. And of course, if you have any questions or comments or disagreements, feel free. I understand that it's going to be a very contentious thing nonetheless. So first of all, ES Claude, still available, Kale banner. Again, if you have stones, you can go for that. It is a 2% rate up. Actually, no, gone, sorry. Okay, never mind. ES Claude is a great unit. He can set preemptive slash zone. He can also do a flexible omni zone where he can essentially adjust and set zone for any weapon zone that is pierce, magic, slash, which is his default, as well as blunt. Now the downside to that massive ability is first turn you have to give an empathy orb to one of your units, and you can only give it to one. You can't do it again for the rest of the battle. On turn 2 then, you can activate that zone set for a 2-turn AF or 2-turn zone. And so you are limited with a lot of these newer power crept units or super powerful units. You need a 2-turn setup. You can't just do it turn 1. You cannot add that empathy stack during the AF on turn 1. So keep in mind there is a limitation. However, Claude offers one of the best offensive support kits in the game, in the fact that he gives crit damage plus 100%, not to mention other things like weapon boosts and so on and so forth. So he does add a lot to your team, and the fact that you can change your zone to any weapon zone, that can help you on early game as well as end game, because let's be honest, if you don't have every zone setter in the game, provided you're willing to wait until turn 2, which is fine in almost all the fights other than near the very end game, you won't disappoint you. Now, as a very small aside, keep in mind, if you choose one of these ES units, you will have access eventually to grind out and side grade to AS as well as normal style. I realize some of them won't be nearly as powerful, but still gives you some flexibility and additional value for the unit. Keep in mind that some of them have manifests, which also allow you to earn back stones. I don't really consider it a super benefit, but it's there nonetheless. Okay, so next unit I wanted to discuss, or group of units actually, singers. Now, how do I rank singers? Are they better than zone units? Are they worse? And the answer really lies on how you want to play. Now, no one can argue that singers are not useful. The two main ones people ask about is AS Mystère as well as Tsukiha. I don't have AS Mystère, although I have had the opportunity to side grade her for a very long time and I chose not to. Tsukiha I had since she came out, which is about a year ago. I can tell you from my experience, at least with Tsukiha, and my research into AS Mystère, I feel Tsukiha is a lot easier to use. Her main standout points is double damage with Rhapsody Aria. Applies breaks such that you can get quad damage in the right setup. Adds crit damage for physical units up to 60%. Also can increase weapon damage by pierce units up to 60%. Has a mitigating song oratorio which can reduce damage by 50%. Also heals at the end of turn 1/3. Also status recovery. All in one, let's just say. Mystère's got a little bit different kit. Can add some DPS depending to your team, not double damage, but increase by a significant amount depending on how you alternate her moves. She can have an end of turn dual debuff, which is 25-25 stackable up to 50-50. So in third turn, she'll get a pretty significant dual debuff while she's singing. She can also have an end of turn attack. It's a wind type attack, I believe. And over time, that builds up and have more damage up to, I think, 10 turns. What's really interesting is that if you boost her with other units out there, such as Yifa AS, which we haven't talked about yet, then you will get some serious damage out of her. But the fact remains for sure with Mystère AS, generally more of a stall strat. What I mean by it is either a no AF strat, or you're waiting a number of turns for it to kind of build up and do that. And if you're wondering why I say that, it's because it takes time for her to build up the damage. And when you sing, if you're continuously singing, you lose one unit in the AF itself, which can be detrimental. With Tsukiha, for example, if I do a 1 or 2 turn AF, I activate her song at the very end so that the last few hits of my other units are doing extreme amounts of damage. And that's how I usually activate and use Tsukiha if I'm using Rhapsody Aria. In the case of defensiveness, you can use the song to kind of help you along. Even in early game or end game, you can use the song to kind of stall out, prevent damage, and so on and so forth. Very, very useful. Plug and play, can fit in almost every team for most of these singers because the singing capability is basically independent and you can use your other 3 units to kind of do whatever you need, and the singer will fill the role in what you need, which is usually either mitigation or extra damage. So ultimate support in that sense. My opinion nowadays is the meta has changed now that your singers is kind of like almost a stopgap. As you have a more complete roster, again, my opinion, I find that singers fall behind in terms of usefulness only because you can win hard with a 2 or 1 turn AF, and now by having no singer, you can plug in that 4th unit with whatever unit best suits your needs, whether or not you need another DPS, another support, an offensive support, something to change zones or do other weird things like that. And so singers are not necessarily as powerful in terms of high level short, low turn clears that also exploit AFs. Now, if you're not at that advanced level where you just need something to help you along and make things a lot easier, Pizzica would definitely be, in my opinion, edges out AS Mystere slightly. But again, depends on your playstyle. You can definitely do some research on the units. The wiki is there, Discord, the AE subreddit. You can ask for opinions. You can watch my 5-star review on a lot of these units if I have them. I only have Pizzica, for example. So hopefully that addresses your choice on singers. Next, we're going to talk about Yifa AS. Yifa AS, as I mentioned, is a very powerful unit. Full support. She can cast a Faith charge on a unit, after which she can now bless that unit with her moves that can essentially increase their stats by a massive margin. She also, I think, has kickback resistance, which is nice for niche fights, but main use of hers to boost even mediocre units will now do tremendous amounts of damage for your team. Downside with Yifa AS is only the fact that she is a pure support, so I would argue that in the early game, when you have very limited rosters, boosting another unit may not be as optimal as in the end game, where you see Yifa AS a lot in end game strats, especially things like low turn clears or no AF strats. Because remember, just like most of the newer units, it does take 2 turns to set up, and they have to be outside AF. First turn Faith has to be outside AF, followed by, if you want to do a 2-turn AF or just no AF strats, you can do that with Yifa AS. Not to mention, Yifa AS is a blunt zone setter, so if you don't have a blunt zone setter, she can VC in a blunt zone and help you win hard. Okay, next, we are now going to talk about Eva. And again, please don't get too angry at my comments, but I would argue Eva is not a contender here for a Star Dream. What? What did GamerDad say? Not a contender for the Star Dream. I know, shocking. I know, this is after some careful consideration, and again, just my opinion, so keep that in mind. First of all, if you want to believe it, Eva is almost a year old. First of all, last year, the global WFS Global put out the previous year's Global First unit as a separate banner. As in, last year you can summon both Eva or Melissa. This year, I would expect it to be the same, where you can probably summon it on the Eva banner if you need to. I'm not sure if she could be shared with anyone or not. So, same caveat as the Flam that we talked about earlier on as our first pick. If you have the ability to save a bunch of stones during during the next month, Eva's banner may pop up. And keep in mind, Star Dreams you can buy on the last day and then hold the ticket for another 30 days. This banner is available for 30 days as well. You buy on day 29, and then you can hold the ticket for another 29 days and then decide based on your future pulls and stuff how you do, and then you can choose your unit at that time. So don't feel forced to buy it today. It's just this video is obviously today because the banner came out today. First of all, so if you have stones and you can save for it, you may be able to pull an Eva. What's more important is that a year ago and even up to now, Eva is the foundation, another foundational piece in the ultimate water magic team. That is, you've seen me use Eva, Flam, Ultra Xion, or Eva, Flam, Aisha, and RCF to kind of finish up. Now, the problem is this. If you're using paid money, I would argue that Ultra Hismina may replace Eva. So hear me out here. One of the main, the main powerful things about Eva is that she can self-boost with Icicle Torch. She can hit 2 times, but she can hit 4 times if you're above 50% HP. After that, it only drops to 2. Each hit inflicts break, which allows either her to deal tons of damage, or the next unit hitting, which is Flam, to hit for lots of damage with a Neptune. And she can also set Magic Zone, which no one does. She can do dual debuff, which is not too necessary because you have 30/30s everywhere. And she can boost and heal, which is nice. She also has access to crystal attacks, which I will say is great because there are not that many crystal damage units out there. However, Astro Drago loses effectiveness once you hit as you hit more units. I believe it's more effective against single targets. Also, her other crystal isn't nearly as damaging unless you already boosted her with Sorge. So she boosts her speed an int, right? And that you really rely on that kind of kit with the break and all that in order to really make her shine. Not only that, but let's be honest, most enemies aren't going to be weak to Crystal. You might have a neutral to Crystal. And so I'll address each of these things. If you're talking about Crystal DPS, Alma is the premier Crystal unit DPS at this point. If it's weak to Crystal, you're using Alma anyways to exploit. If it's neutral to Crystal, you can still use Alma to win. In terms of water DPS, yes, those multiple breaks are great, but you know what? Alter His Mina can do that. And, like I mentioned, Alter His Mina can be shoved in a magic team or a water magic team. If you have two staff users, aka Aisha and Flam, Alter His Mina will flexible change to staff damage, which is magic damage, and guess what? Will benefit from things like mental focus, which Flam can provide. She'll lay down multiple weapon breaks, which now will convert into magic break, right? Because it converts her attacks and things to the weapon type and weapon break of her move. So when she changes from slash moves to pierce moves, it'll now be a pierce break from what I understand. And so if you follow along here, the breaks that Icicle Zorch helped you with for a well-timed Neptune will now take place instead of with His Mina. And His Mina can still hit massive DPS under 50% HP, although Eva cannot. Now keep in mind, Alter His Mina also gives things like water res down in the same hit and fizz res down. However, she does lose the dual debuff, which Eva has, as well as two elements, which I understand. But in comparison, Alter His Mina can awaken zone, and Eva cannot. Eva also loses effectiveness after 3 turns unless you activate Lunatic again. So if you're talking purely on a water-based DPS team, I would argue Alter His Mina can replace Eva in a team with Flam as well as Aisha. And now that we're talking about that, let's talk about RCF. Why is RCF not on my list for an immediate draft? Unfortunately, again, as the units have come out, a lot of units can be replaced. Not to say they're power crap, that's not what I'm talking about. You can say they are, but I don't like to say one unit is better than the others. It's just that you can say that they can do different things, and so you're trying to choose a unit that best suits it and can last into the future. One last thing I'll say about Alter His Mina. She comes from the future. We're using future technology when we're using Alter His Mina. And the reason why I say that is that Alter His Mina came at a time that Global and Japan got at the same time. And it has to be viable in Japan. So we are getting units, her as a unit, 3 months ahead of when we should. Thereby, her power levels are worth at least 3 months. And we talk about longevity as our draft. So you know that you're getting a unit way ahead of what it should be. In my opinion, and again, in my opinion, Ace Nokoko would be a better suited option to pay a Starbeam for than RCF. I get it. RCF can do Fire Zone. No one uses that. Switches to every elemental attack based on the element, which is really, really good. Normal style Nokoko can do that. He gives weapon damage up 50. Type res down and type attack up to 75% in all elemental zones, and switches for those. And can awaken zone, and while awaken zone increases power and int by 35%, I believe. Also hits for 4 times and increases combo meter and gives weak point, and so ultimate support, right? RCF. Now consider this: if you have AS Nokoko, you are getting power, speed, int, and weapon damage up to 75% in any elemental zone, which does at least rival RCF. At least rival RCF. Also, can do 50% triple debuff in an elemental zone. RCF cannot do that. RCF does have physical damage shielding up 50%, and he has a modest barrier, but the triple debuff allows Nokoko AS in any elemental team to now have access to a triple debuff, which is very rare to start with. And I would argue that if you need RCF as a damage support, why don't you just put AS Nokoko in there, and instead of using AS Nokoko with RCF, your RCF will now be replaced by strong DPS. Such that, don't forget that most benefits can cap at 100%. So if she's already giving power, speed, int, and weapon damage 75, you're already there essentially. And some of the other units may give us modest boost, in which case you're nearing maximum things. And if you're talking about DPS and how AS Nakoko does very little damage, yeah, you're right. RCF isn't relied on damage either, right? And so, yeah, it's really hard to compare the two. And I realize they do different things. And I'm not saying and throwing shade on RCF that he sucks. It's just that you're spending money. So if you only have enough to spend on one, then you would draft, in my opinion, AS Nakoko also over RCF. So hopefully that gives you some ideas as to where I put the units on a draft board in terms of kind of order and rank. If you need other units such as zones, and let's be honest, again, if your roster is only moderate and you're missing a number of zones, you may choose some of the more powerful units out there. There's like, thinking AS Miyunfa, there's lots of units out there that can be drafted. It's just that, again, I think that by mentioning those units I already have, that should give you a great idea in terms of filling off the roster. And after that, honestly, it's really up to you. Okay, sorry for the long video. That is part 1. We're quickly going to cover all these other banners and give you my thoughts about Alter Tsukiha, which I didn't mention, by the way, in this Star Dream. Quickly speaking, if you want to, you got 5 rate ups for the Fire Zone units. All of them are extremely powerful. Tsukiha, Shion, AS Radius, ES Iska, and AS Daily. Oh yeah, sorry. I know, I've been thinking about a lot of different things. Quickly speaking, AS Radius could be on your draft board for a Star Dream. Keep in mind that it's a tank, pure tank. If you want to survive for 3 turns, no questions asked, he's great. Not everyone wants to play a defensive style team. So if you want to win and win hard and just kill everybody, I would say that there might be better choices. If you need survivability in the ultimate way, he's great. But keep in mind that like I said, you're just tanking hits, and that way you may not be learning how to mitigate damage and use other things instead. So just quickly covering that. Anyways, this banner, again, all 5 units here are extremely powerful. I would argue AS Silly is probably the worst of the 5, followed by ES Iska. The other 3 are extremely awesome, and you can clearly see that they can be used. So if you want 3 or more of these units, and I don't see why not, you can spend some money here. Keep in mind, again, I know that budgets are an issue, and not everyone's going to drop 4 or 8k in paid stones. So bear in mind, this is more of a sparingly type of thing. Same with this banner, where it's 10% rate up for Noble Blossom Tsukiha, and the rest is random. Yeah, if you have lots of money, you can go for these, because these are 10% flat chances on getting Alter Tsukiha. Otherwise, your Star Dream can Alter Tsukiha if you need to. Keep quickly speaking, if you're willing to spend 1,000 stones or 4,000 stones anyways, why risk it? Grind out the treatises for Tsukiha, pay 1,000 stones, guarantee yourself one of the Tsukihas. Normal style Tsukiha with Manifest, not that powerful now. AS Tsukiha, not decent still in a Katana supported team. ES Tsukiha, still a great Pierce Zone setter. Has to VC in, which is unfortunate. However, you have Pierce Zone Grasta, and she can do a ton of damage in the right team. So if you're willing to spend money, don't Star Dream Tsukiha. You can just guarantee a Tsukiha here and save your Star Dream for another need. And then you can side grade if you're willing to wait 2 or 3 months for that. Or 3 to 6 depending. Okay, and let's go directly into the banner. Let's see what the free banner allows. Okay, this is a great banner if you're missing Tsukiha in any form. Look at that. 2% rate up, 0.8 for the Alter, 1.2 for the normal. Great way. That means a 2% rate up for everyone getting any form of Tsukiha. So, perfect banner if you're missing Tsukiha. If you have some free stones, you can definitely do that. Totally awesome. So back to Tsukiha Alter. The great thing about her is that not only can she VC in Fire Zone, she gives a barrier that can reduce damage by 50%, which is great. Her main trick is that outside of AF, she can give herself up to 3 inspiration or morale stacks. They changed the terminology. Or give herself and one other unit a morale stack. If you give it to someone else, that person's elements for all attacks are now fire. I believe that ties in units attacks too. So for example, for AS Victor, instead of the end of turn being a wind type attack, I believe it will be fire. I could be wrong there, so correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of her passive skills, end of turn heal in fire zone, up to 40% heal, up to 40% boosted max HP for anyone with has a morale stack. So remember that you can one turn or first turn morale on someone. It stacks her and someone else, increasing your max HP for those two units, depending on the fire. She also has end of turn status recovery too, which is really, really good. Anyone who gets stunned by statuses in fights, that will help you a lot. She can awaken zone. In the right fire team, and she is a fire zone setter, she's going to suffer from 4 move slot, because other than her zone setting move, she can give her whole team power and int and crit damage up 30 and 35 respectively. In fire zone is now 70% up int and power and crit damage up 60, and I believe also for party members with morale, that means their weapon damage is also increased 60. How powerful is that? If you shove that into a fire zone team and she can be a backbone of it, you're going to wreak havoc on the game. Not only that, again, we have Aisha. Aisha can set your zone. Now she doesn't have to rely on setting a zone. She can just boost and buff everyone such that they're doing massive amounts of damage, right? Power, int, crit damage up, and weapon damage up. She also can do fire resistance down up to 80% in fire zone and increase fire type attack damage by up to 80% in fire zone. And her DPS can guarantee crit rate, which is great because not every team has a crit setter, and increases her own damage as needed. Her damage is not the highest out there, but she can set crit rate, which is still nice. And finally, she has another move that reduces, the reduction in fire type down and fire damage up is up to 100%. The other one's only a 4-star move. So you can see that, her another sense, which is the special ability while she has, while another zone's active, she extends another zone by 3 turns. Now, if you know how powerful RCF is, he only does it by 2. She does it by 3. And if you want to compare the two, in a fire team, she can actually outperform RCF in all the offensive supports. Remember that the main thing about RCF is that he can increase weapon damage by 50, he can increase your fire attack or elemental attack by 75, decrease the fire resistance by 75 in fire zone, and she can also set zone, increase power and int, and so on and so forth. Keep in mind, she does fire type damage up 100, which is capped, fire resistance down 100, which is capped. She also sets crit, which is great, and she can give crit damage up 60, which Ultra Dude can't do, and so on and so forth. So again, in the right fire team, Ultra Tsukiha is extremely broken. Now, if you have no form of Tsukiha and you have some free stones, go for it. I think this is a great banner. I don't know if it's 10 out of 10, but it's a great banner. And Tsukiha in every form is pretty cool, and I do like Tsukiha. I'm a fan favorite of Tsukiha. She will be useful in meta to the end anyways, because her fire support is unparalleled. Now, that being said, if you want me to be strict about this banner, as awesome as she is, as highly powered as she can power a fire zone, I would argue that generally, fire is more than enough to win. If you have a high level Garyu, which I do, and you have Aisha, which is free, and you can put in a decent Aldo or Kid as your fire team, that's a free fire team that can wreak havoc even at low light and shadow limits. Now, I realize that that requires a lot of Grasta, but if you watch some of the other YouTube videos out there of other content creators making free strats, a fire team led by Aisha, Garyu, Aldo, or whoever, and Kid can essentially win already. Ultra Tsukiha, in my opinion, as powerful as she is, as awesome as she is a luxury pull. Now, again, she will add to your fire team. She will be the foundation of your fire team. She will win hard as your fire team. But we have to talk about competing capital. How many stones do you have? Do you have 50k stones? Do you have 10k stones? Do you have 2k stones? Is your 2k stones enough for Minoka, her, AS Nokolo, Any Global First, AS Flam? Do you have all those units already? It's a tough choice, right? Even at 10k, you're probably not safe. Potentially 20k, you're not safe, surprisingly. Remember that in a full rate-up banner, even 4k is only 2/3 chance, and 5k on a split banner is only half chance of getting featured unit. 20k, in my opinion, my own 20k here, is really only enough for 2 or 3 banners, because you can die hard. 10k is not anything when you lose badly. Likewise, 1k would be enough if you're lucky. So, if you really want to balance out your expenditure, Ultra Tsukiha has to be a pass for the time being. You can always circle back if you've gotten units afterwards, because this banner should be around for 2 months. But strictly speaking, free fire teams are more than capable of handling all the endgame up to now for the most part. So, you know, but, she is the ultimate fire support right now, not to be denied at all. And let's be honest, she's waifu, she's cute, and she's happy. So, well worth the investment if you're willing to. So finally, I'm not going to be summoning on these banners. I have all the normal style versions, so I'll be grinding as of tonight. Hopefully this gives you some insight, and I do apologize for both the long video as well as possibly offending people with my picks. Don't take it too seriously. Again, just my thoughts. Hopefully you can see some wisdom there and learn something from it. Anyways, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.